Big addition, not gonna.
If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you win wisdom or lovers.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your host, JC Johnson, and we are on part 2 of today's episode of For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And today, we're talking about the wisdom of procreativity. So if you caught us on the first hour, then you already know what it is. But if you're just tuning in now, don't change the station. Don't turn us off, because we'll be right back after this.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. On today's show, we're talking about the wisdom of procreativity. And so, the recommended book for this week is The New Strong-Willed Child by Dr. James Dobson. This book is about how to lovingly and effectively discipline a child that needs just a little bit more attention. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. Audible is spelled AUDIBLE, so that's audibletrial.com/lovewisdom.
Hey everybody, you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
With your host, Jason Johnson.
Don't Be Afraid by Scarlet Canary. You heard it here on northcoastunderground.com. Awesome band right there. Welcome back. You are listening to For the Love of Wisdom on northcoastunderground.com, where the underground starts with you. And we are on hour 2 of For the Love of Wisdom, and today we are talking about the wisdom of procreativity. Now, before the break during hour 1, we just went over the introductory information on this topic. We first talked about what does procreativity mean. So if you're just tuning in, real quick, it just means that really it comes from the Latin word procreat, which means generated or brought forth, and it comes from the verb procreare. The pro, that prefix pro, means forth, and the second part of that, creare, it means create, so to forth create or procreate. And we talked about how that's linked to family in a human context and in most species as well. When we talk about procreation, we are talking about the creation of a family. And we talked about what a family is comprised of, which is parents, children, and child rearing. And amongst other things, we could add a few more things to that, but that's the bare essentials of what a family is in the most simplest context. And we also had touched a little bit on what's going on with YouTube. YouTube had actually shut down the website of a pro-life group who was promoting a product that reverses abortions. It's a abortion pill reversal protocol that they're advocating for, and YouTube took their account off of YouTube, saying that it had repeated or severe violations of the community guidelines. So if you want to join the conversation on that, definitely reach out to me on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @LoveWisePodcast. And of course, if you want to listen to hour 1 and you didn't get a chance to earlier, don't worry about it, because this episode is going to be posted online in our podcast, For the Love of Wisdom. And you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, or on Google Play. Soon, hopefully, it'll also be on Spotify for you. So you got some different ways where you can listen to it. And we're also going to be uploading these podcasts to YouTube as a video as well. So that is coming soon. But for now, you can, check out the 4 main places: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Google Play. And you can hear past episodes, including the previous hour that we just had here, talking about the wisdom of procreativity. So let's take a look at the next headline. The next one here, we're talking about parents and the relationship between them and their children, how that can affect things. That we have a headline here written by The National, which is a newspaper that supports an independent Scotland media outlet here, and the headline is "Parents are the best role models for getting children active." And I think that this is a pretty cool one, as we're talking about family and the wisdom of procreativity, different things that parents and children can do, different ways that parents can actually promote the well-being of their children. So it says, no matter what we do to get kids active and into sport, if we don't understand that activity should be a regular thing and built into our daily lives, we won't make a sufficient enough change to see an improvement. All right, now this is talking about the importance of getting your children active. And if any of you have children, like I know I have children, and I'm always looking, my wife and I, we're always looking at ways to get them active and involved in things. Like my daughter, she's in ballet. She really enjoys that. Looking for some different things too. For my son, as he gets older, he's only 1 now, but we're just looking at different ways to get them involved, so that they're just not just sitting around or just watching cartoons, but getting them really into some stuff that they're going to enjoy, and something that's also going to just ultimately promote the quality of their lives. So I think that this article is pretty cool, and if you have kids, I think you'll agree. It goes on to say a recent study by the Australian Sports Commission has found that although activity levels are increasing within the younger generation, they are still not meeting the recommended levels, and that parents could be the biggest influencers right now. So a child, right, they can't sign themselves up for any kind of organized sports. They can't drive, at least they're not supposed to take themselves anywhere to participate in any of these kind of things. So as parents, it is really important that we are not only supportive of these different things that our children can get involved with, but also that we are actually facilitating that, because if we don't facilitate it, they can't get there, they can't get involved. And of course, we don't want them, especially as we're getting into the last couple of weeks of spring, going into the summer right now. There's so many activities that they can be involved with, so we want to make the most of that, whether it's summer camps or even if it's just meeting other parents in your neighborhood, having them do something with the children if you're not available to do that. There's all types of ways that you can get your kids involved. So this article, one thing it says, which as it concludes, it says that if a parent can find time for their own activity, they'll be positively influencing their child. And that's important too, because it's not just about what we get our kids involved with, but it's also, as the article says, it's about being the best role model. So if our children see that we are actually out, that we're active, that we're not just sitting around just watching TV or whatever, if they see that we're actually doing things and being productive, it's going to make them want to do the same thing. Because in most cases, children do want to emulate their parents. They do want to be like them, because as parents, we are role models. And before their favorite music artist, before their favorite actor or any kind of person, their teachers, their friends, any other influential people in their lives, before all of them, it starts at home with the parents. So I thought that article was pretty cool. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is what happens when a child feels that their parent has had some sort of negative impact on them. Now, we were talking about the positive influences that we can have as a role model, but things don't work out like that all the time. Sometimes children feel like they had a negative impact as it related to their parents, and there's a great article that talks about that and some help for those parents and children who have been in situations like that. And I think that you'll really enjoy that. Of course, it ties into the topic today, which is the wisdom of procreativity. Why is having a family important, and how can it be done effectively in 2018? Because there's all types of ways that you can have a family, and in hour one we had talked about how you do have traditional families, which are two parents and one or more children, but then you also have non-traditional families, such as single parent households, whether that's a single mother or a single father, or even semi non-traditional families, which maybe the children don't live with either parent, but they live with both grandparents maybe. So they still have two parental figures in the household. They're just not their direct biological parents. They are biological parents, but one generation removed. So there's all different types of ways that a person can be reared inside of a family. And so we are sensitive to that on this show as well, because not everybody comes from a traditional household. But we're going to look at whether you come from a traditional household or not. There is still hope. So we'll be right back after the break. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom on North Coast Underground.
You're now listening to For the Love of Wisdom on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with who? No other but you.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your host, JC Johnson, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And of course, you know you're listening on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you. So, before the break, we were talking about how overall we're talking about the wisdom of procreativity, how that relates to parents interacting with their children, having children in the first place, the wisdom behind that. And before the break, we were talking about how parents are really the best role models for their children in all things, really, but specifically when it comes to getting children active, you know, because they look at what we're doing and that influences what they do. And also it's up to us to really get them involved with different things, whether that's in, you know, sports or just in other kind of recreational activities that are productive. And, you know, during the break, I was actually just watching or looking at a text that just came through. My wife was just saying that looks like she just came back from the dentist with our daughter, and I guess it didn't go too well. So I'll have to follow up with her on that to see what's going on. Hey, and as parents, we definitely need to be role models when it comes to things like that. Like, how do you handle situations where maybe you're afraid? A lot of children are afraid of the dentist or afraid of getting a shot, things like that. So it's up to us to, to be positive, to be strong, because they do tend to cry and, they get a little bit uncomfortable in those scenarios, but they do look to us to reassure them, to be calm, to show them, hey, it's not that bad. Hey, I go to the dentist. Also, I have to get shots as well, and it's not that bad. You can talk them through it. But before the break, I also mentioned that there are times when there are parent-child relationships that are not always so positive, times when things are damaged, and it does have an impact on the parents and on the children. So there's actually an article that someone wrote for The Atlantic, and someone was writing into a therapist, and this is a parent who actually wrote in, and she said, "My adult daughter thinks I was an awful parent." Right? It's pretty tough, right? So let's take a look and see what this has to say. Here's a a few snippets from it. It says she's 32, so the daughter is 32 years old, and she blames her mother for her unhappiness, right? So what does it say? A mother writes an article to The Atlantic saying, "My 32-year-old daughter has developed the idea that I am responsible for all her failures, not having the job she wanted, not being a sociable person, and not being capable to love and to be loved." Wow, that's pretty heavy. That's a lot to put on your parent, you know. Now, it's understandable that, you know, not everybody has the best experiences with their parents, but are our parents really to blame for the choices that we make in our lives or for the outcomes of our lives? It's a good question. So here, the therapist responds to this mother, and she says, "For better or worse, raising a child isn't an exact science. There are so many reasons that people's lives don't turn out the way they want. You can be a conscientious and caring parent, and your child still might have trouble launching into adulthood." And that's very true, right? So, of course, parents do have an impact, but they can't be blamed for everything that goes wrong in your life. Ultimately, when you become an adult, you're responsible. You're responsible to take the good and the bad that have happened in your life and to figure out a way to learn from that in order to make good decisions in your life. So even if your parents didn't make the best decisions, it's still no excuse for you, because now it's your turn. It's your turn to make better decisions, especially if you have children one day yourself. So this article then goes on to say, most important, this is the therapist speaking to this mother who had this unfortunate news about her daughter. She says, most important, compassion will help you both to call a truce. I say truce because the two of you are engaged in a battle over who's responsible for your daughter's current predicament. I suggest that you go first, which doesn't mean that you're wrong and she's right, because that's important, right? But she says going first doesn't take away the complex calculus of why certain choices were made or why various interactions occurred. It just means that the battle is serving neither of you, and it's time for the standoff to end. And I thought that was pretty good advice. I think that was excellent advice for that parent, because, hey, at the end of the day, right, the daughter is not right for blaming her mother for everything that's going wrong in her life, but this mother is not any more right if she just lets this go on and doesn't at least hear her daughter out and where she's coming from. So as the parent, it is usually best to, in a situation like that, hey, you might need to be the one that reaches out to your child and say, hey, I know you have a problem with me, but how can we fix this? You know, how can we improve the relationship? And, you know, not everybody, of course, is willing to do that, but for those who are willing to do that, it can turn a negative situation into ultimately a positive one. There's been, you know, many stories like that, where you have different, you know, children who have experienced all types of things, from, you know, maybe physical or sexual abuse from parents and other family, and just, you know, anything that you can imagine, anything bad that you can imagine happening to a child. There are plenty of situations where a parent has stepped forward and has tried to make amends. And sometimes it's not about who's right, it's about who's willing to be the bigger person and make that uncomfortable step of saying, okay, hey, let's talk about this. On a more positive note, here's another headline here. This was written on May 5th, and it comes from the Independent newspaper, which is a newspaper in Nigeria. All right, and there's an interview here with a woman by the name of Ifeoma Onanye, and that's the writer, and she's actually interviewing Dr. Winifred Adefolahan Awosika, right? And it says she tells the success story of her schools and how she had to fight her way through from being a housewife to a successful entrepreneur. And the headline here is "Good Marriage Added to the Success Story of Chrisland." So let's take a look. It says here, High Chief Dr. Winifred is a great force to reckon with in the education sector. And this is what she had to say. If you have a good marriage, it will add to your success story. Because before I started making any income, my husband provided everything. I have a Volvo car, 2.1, and a Toyota car that were brand new at the time. Because he took good care of us, I had full concentration on my goal. He saw my passion and keyed into it. Hey, and that's really important too. That's one of the benefits of a family where you do have a husband and a wife, or two parents, or basically two partners. Really, one is able to help the other. Both can kind of come together and do some good things with each other, help each other to ultimately fulfill their goals, and that affects their children as well. Because in the article, it then went on to say she went on to say that she started a school in 1977, and she actually had started it with 2 of her children and 3 of her children's friends. And it says Chrisland was founded on love. So every staff and parent knows what it means to be a member of a Chrisland family. And I think that that's pretty important too, because this woman and her husband were able to come together, work together. Not only was she able to start this school, which went on to be successful, but her children were involved. Because when children see that their parents are working together, they're going to want to become a part of it. They want to work together with them as well. And I think that that's great wisdom for us. We're going to a commercial break. We'll be right back. You're listening to NorthCoastUnderground.com.
Hey everybody, you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
With your host, Jason Johnson.
Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. As we are discussing today on For the Love of Wisdom on NorthCoastUnderground.com, today we are talking about the wisdom of procreativity. And before the break, we looked at a couple of headlines. We looked at one was from a parent that was writing into a therapist, explaining that her daughter basically blames her for all of the negative things that have happened to her in her life. Pretty heavy, right? But the therapist offers some great advice as far as actually reaching out to her daughter, starting the process of healing for the both of them by being the bigger person, taking that step and saying, hey, I know that you're upset about things that have happened between us, but I want to make this right. And ultimately, regardless of who's right, who's wrong, I think that it is important to make amends when possible. All right. And then we also looked at an article from a newspaper in Nigeria where the headline for that was that a good marriage added to the success story of Chrisland, which is a school that was founded out there, which was a school that was started by a woman whose husband not only encouraged her to start it, but he actually made a way for her to do that by supporting her financially and basically allowing her the opportunity to do it. And it went on to be a great success. The school was founded in 1977 and has helped a lot of people. All right, so one thing that's really important, I think, in this discussion on the wisdom of procreativity and family, I think we need to look at the statistics on family in 2018, or at least, within the last few years, right? So I have some facts here from the United States Census Bureau, and this has to do with parents or children that are raised in a 2-parent household. And contrary to what some may believe, it actually says that the majority of children live with 2 parents. All right, so in November 17th, 2016, at that time it says that the majority of America's 73.7 million children under age 18 live in families with 2 parents. That is a whopping 69%. That's pretty high. Maybe not as high as 1950, but it's a lot higher than what most people might think, right? So according to new statistics released today, which was November 17, 2016, at that time, it says that compared to other types of living arrangements, such as living with grandparents or having a single parent, the majority of children do live with 2 parents. All right, so the second most common family arrangement is children living with a single mother, which is 23% of children, right? So 23% of children live with a single mother. And let's compare that to what was going on about 50, almost 60 years ago. All right, so it says between 1960 and 2016, the percentage of children living in families with two parents decreased from 88% to 69%. All right, so that's a pretty significant drop there, almost 20%. Of those 50.7 million children living in families with two parents, 47.7 million live with two married parents, and 3 million live with two unmarried parents. Okay? So now when it comes to marriage and family, the median age when adults first marry continues to rise. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, again, this is from 2016, but it pretty much applies today. It hasn't changed much. It was the average age to get married in 2016 was 29 and a half for men, and for women it was 27 and a half. All right, so compare that to 1947, where the average age for a man to get married was 23.7 or almost 24, and the average age for a woman was 20 and a half. All right, and that was 1947. So it goes on to say here that in 2016, almost 1/3 of all adults, that's 32%, have never been married. All right, that's as of 2016, up from about 1/4, which was 23% in 1950. All right, so that's a little bit of a difference there. And of the 11 million families with children under age 18 and no spouse present, the majority are single mothers, 8.5 million. And then after single mothers, there's single fathers, which comprise about 2.5 million of the leaders in single parent families. Again, the majority of children are raised in a household with both parents, but in those households where there is only one parent, it looks like 11 million of them are with single mothers and 2.5 million of them are with single fathers. All right, and about 62% of children have a mother who works outside the home, which is slightly less than those with a father who works outside the home, which is 66%. So not really much of a difference there. 66% versus 62%. All right, and as it relates to older adults, almost 14 million older adults live alone, representing 29% of all adults age 65 or older. All right, and when it comes to unmarried adults, more than 8 million opposite sex couples live together without being married. About 38% of opposite sex unmarried couples have a child under the age of 18 living with them. Now, that is a whole nother topic right there, but I think that it is important to touch on it a little bit. Now, you know, legally, no one's going to stop you from having a child if you're not married. You know, there's no law against that or anything. But there are some benefits to, you know, having children within marriage, especially as it relates to procreativity. Although in the world as a whole, the majority of people who are born, not just in the U.S., the majority of children live in a household with both parents. But worldwide, though, there's more people that are born outside of marriage than inside of marriage. Now, that doesn't mean that that is the best way to do it. However, that is the majority right now. But as we can see, there are plenty of things that can potentially go wrong in a scenario like that. But at the same time, marriage doesn't guarantee that everything will go right either. However, it is a structure that is supposed to work. Of course, it doesn't always work because we are in a fallen world with imperfect people, and not everybody does things properly. But if it was a perfect world and everyone did what they were supposed to, then the ideal situation would be for a child to grow up within a two-parent household. And if the parents are married, that would be best, because that speaks to commitment, and we know that neither parent is going anywhere. But at least, even if they're not married, at least if they can live in that household with both of their parents, then ultimately it is going to be better for them in the long run. Because, hey, a mother can't teach a son how to be a man, and a man can't teach a daughter how to be a woman. You know, both parents are needed. They both have different strengths, different things to bring to the table. So neither one is more important than the other. Both are really important. So that is it when it comes to the statistics. We're actually about to conclude the show right at 6 o'clock. But before we conclude, we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to end out just by looking at what do the wisest people in the world have to say about marriage, family, and children. We'll be right back after this. You're listening on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with you.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl Queen Z from the Queen Z Show, and you are listening to For the Love of Wisdom.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back. This is your host, JC Johnson, and we are on the last segment here For the Love of Wisdom. We're about to conclude for today. But, you know, I didn't want to leave you without some awesome quotes from some well-known people, as well as from the Bible as it relates to family and the importance of it. So let's take a look at what Michael J. Fox has to say. All right, so Michael J. Fox said, "Family is not an important thing, it's everything." I think that's an awesome quote right there. I think that sums up things pretty well. Let's see what Barbara Bush has to say. The First Lady, former First Lady, Barbara Bush. She says, "To us, family means putting your arms around each other and being there. Simple, straight to the point, but powerful." Right? All right. So what about Earl Nightingale? Earl Nightingale, what does he have to say about family? All right. Earl Nightingale said, "Learn to enjoy every minute of your life. Be happy now. Don't wait for something outside of yourself to make you happy in the future. Think how really precious is the time you have to spend, whether it's at work or with your family. Every minute should be enjoyed and savored." And I think that couldn't be said any better than that. That's really important. Family is really what matters. If you have family, they should be appreciated and cherished. And every amount of time that you have with them is awesome, because you never know how much time you're going to have. Anything can happen at any time, right? So those are some quotes from a few well-known people. Now let's take a look and see what the Bible has to say about the wisdom of procreativity and family. All right. Now, in Proverbs 22:6, it says, "Start children off on the right path, and even when they're old, they will not turn away from it." Right? That's Proverbs 22:6. And that's important, right? Because, hey, children look to parents first before anyone else to be a good influence. So definitely got to start children off on the right path, or train them up in the way that they should go, as some other translations say. Psalm 127, 3 through 5 says, "Children are a gift from the Lord." And in Ephesians 6, 1 through 4, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, because it's the right thing to do." It also says, "Honor your father and mother." Right? And so sometimes as parents, you might feel like, you know, you're pulling your hair out because children are not listening to you. But this says that they really should be doing that. So definitely, that's a good one right there. And then lastly, to conclude, we have Psalm 103, verse 17. It says, "But the Lord's love for those who have respect for him lasts forever and ever. Their children's children will know that he always does what is right." And that's some encouragement for those of you who just want to know that ultimately you know that you are doing good, you're doing right by your children. But of course, in life, things happen. It's not always as we would like it to be. But this is some encouragement for you that, you know, the Lord is looking out for you, and He's not only going to look out for you, but He's going to look out for your children and your children's children as well. And that's an awesome promise there from Scripture. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening to For the Love of Wisdom. And of course, you're listening on northcoastunderground.com, where the underground starts with you. And we'll be back next week. And next week, we're actually going to be discussing the wisdom of productivity. So you don't want to miss it. We'll be right back next week. Thank you.
Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round.
Money, power, respect, I get it. Higher learning, yeah, I'm with it. Only get better with time, keep got on my mind with wisdom. There's no limit, there's no limit. Get up and get it, can achieve the impossible, conquer every obstacle. Exhausted and grinding, constantly push and do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power, don't let them take it.